This delightful English cottage on the banks of a lake makes a really charming drawing subject, and in this lesson we're looking at drawing more of a scene than the cottage. We want to get this very picturesque cottage in the context of the trees and the little rocky shore in front of it and the water in the front, and also the slope of the hill behind and the foliage in the background. I actually make a bit of a big mistake towards the end, so I'll show you what that is when I come to it. But at this point, I'm just really mapping out the proportions of the cottage and the detail. I'm drawing this with a 0.2mm pen, and I'm just working out exactly what I'm going to do. And I really rough out, in most cases, the bare outlines of these windows without worrying too much about the detail inside them at the moment. And so I then put in some indication of what we see through the glass. So this looks like a beautifully renovated cottage where they've put new windows behind or within the original framing. Just working out the roof so I can complete the overall shape of the cottage. Once I've got that done, I can work on some other things. I decided to put this little side part in, this little barn type building. I imagine it was originally a storage building for supplies for the house, and give an indication of the brickwork in the front. Now there's a fair bit of foliage to draw one way or another, either these small shrubs or larger shrubs or small trees that frame the cottage on the right hand side and also appear in the background. So we're going to put the most work into these closest trees because more detail will help them to come forward. More detail, darker tonal values generally bring things forward, and the reverse helps things to sit further back. So I'm wanting to get some nice dark values in the part just to the lower right of this tree here, just in the bottom corner of the house, of the cottage, because it does give a sense of space moving back. So one of the things I'm trying to do is create a sense of different foliage, that this isn't all the one bush and it's not several bushes that are all the same. So I'm trying to create different silhouettes with some of these different plants, and also just with the colour. Some of them I do hatching over the entire plant to indicate a darker green, a darker local colour than others. And that's something I would do, just simply what would look best, what would create the most separation. In doing that, I wouldn't be a slave to what the actual colours were in my reference. So trying to just work out exactly how I was doing this, and this larger tree I do decide to go dark with. So I do this hatching not really to reflect the form of the tree, but to represent, as I said, simply a darker colour, a darker green. And I just decide to get these two right side chimneys in place. These are the sorts of details that's really easy to draw too big if we're not careful, particularly because there's a fair bit of detail. And whenever there's a little more detail to capture, it is possible to go just slightly too large on each line, each little piece, and overall draw the details larger than we want to. So I'm going to work out what I'm doing with these upper windows. And these darker spaces within the window framing are usually better drawn as negative space by drawing the shadows rather than the positive space of the framing. Now I'm not real sure what to do with the brickwork. I decide I will indicate it because the texture of the brickwork, or it's probably stonework actually, is quite significant to the overall appearance of the cottage. And I feel like having done that, I also need to do some indication in a moment of the slate on the roof, just so that it didn't look too stark and white in comparison, because tonally it's a fairly similar value to the brickwork. And then I also put the shadow on the wall from this bay window that comes out. This drawing took me about 35 minutes to do in real time. It's not an overly difficult drawing, but there's a lot of detail to it. And if we don't want to take the same care with the foliage elements and the background, then we're probably better off choosing a different subject. Some subjects just inherently have more lines and will require time for that, even though it's not hugely difficult. So now I have all this rocky foreshore, and I'm trying to just indicate where the slope is so I don't get lost with it, and something of the waterfront. I can't say drawing water is something I do very often, so I do struggle a bit to find the lines to represent what I'm seeing in some credible way. I was not wanting it to look as though it's just a flat piece of ground in front of a slope, that somehow to give some recognition that it was water. And now I start to do all these stones. This is an area where it would have been easy to draw too much detail. I want the cottage still to be the main focal point. And so really I'm just giving a little detail to the stones at the very front and just suggesting what's at the back. More dots than actual forms being drawn by lines. And so we have all this in place, and now I get my 0.1mm pen to draw this background with a lighter touch. Except I don't. I pick up my 0.3mm pen. And so in fact, instead of drawing these things directly behind the house with a nice light line that will be suitable for less detail, I'm actually making the lines heavier than the lines I drew for the house. So I haven't realized yet, I do a little bit more of this really heavy, dark shading. And I remember thinking, gee, it's maybe my 0.2mm pen is starting to run out, because I'm getting really such a blacker black with this than I got with the other pen. And I think this is the time I realized what had happened. No, I still haven't realized it. I've still got the 0.3. So I hope you can see that I am drawing these shrubs and trees with a much lighter touch, much more gestural approach than I did the closer ones in the foreground. Unfortunately, with the heavier line, they're not sitting as far back in our plane as I would have liked. Actually, no, I have got the 0.1 now. So this is the lighter pen. So all of this should have been with this lighter line that I've just drawn that fence with going up the back. So I'm now trying to just add a few bits and pieces with this lighter pen, and to get a little more lighter detail in some of the lines in front, just to give a little more variation. Picking out some more details in this tree. So if you'd like to have a go drawing this really charming cottage scene and see how you go with it, it's on my channel community page, so you can print off a copy and have a go. It's actually a really nice subject to make an effort to do a fairly complete scene with. G'day, my name's Travers. Look, I hope you found this interesting and helpful, and why not draw it? But whatever you draw, make sure you're having fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.